The engines were just about to roar. Chrome gleamed under the bright midday sun as nearly 20 heavy motorcycles stood lined up outside the dusty roadside diner. Leather jackets creaked as the riders moved, the iconic wings of the Hells Angels stitched across their backs. The air vibrated with that tense, electric silence that always comes right before the thunder of engines. And then a small voice cut through it. "Don't start those bikes." The words were sharp, desperate, and completely unexpected. Every rider froze. Standing a few feet away was a little girl, maybe 9 or 10 years old. Her brown hair was messy, her sneakers were worn, and her small hands trembled as she stretched them out in front of her as if trying to stop a storm. The big men looked at each other in confusion. The girl's eyes were wide with fear, but she didn't move. Something in the urgency of her voice made even the toughest riders pause. Before we continue this incredible story, take a moment to support the channel. If you believe in kindness, second chances, and the power of humanity even in the most unexpected places, please like this video, leave a comment, share it with someone who needs a little hope today, and subscribe to the channel, Only Kindness. Stories like this remind us that compassion can appear anywhere, even in the loud rumble of a biker gang. The midday heat shimmered across the empty highway as the riders slowly stepped away from their bikes. The leader of the group, a tall, broad-shouldered man named Rocco, Iron Wolf, Navarro, removed his sunglasses and looked down at the girl carefully. He had the kind of face that looked carved from stone, deep lines, gray streaks in his beard, and eyes that had seen more trouble than most people could imagine. People usually crossed the street when they saw him, but now he was staring at a child who had just stopped 20 outlaw bikers with nothing but her voice. The girl swallowed hard, fighting tears. Her name was Marisol Vega. She had been standing behind the diner's rusted fence for nearly an hour, watching the bikers eat and laugh. At first she had been terrified. Everyone in town knew the reputation of the Hells Angels. Parents warned their children to stay away. But fear had slowly been replaced by something stronger. Hope. Behind the diner, hidden in the weeds and the broken gravel, was something the bikers hadn't seen. And if those engines started, everything would be ruined. Rocco crouched slightly so he wouldn't tower over her. The other riders watched in silence. Marisol's chest rose and fell quickly as she struggled to speak. Her world had already been turned upside down that morning, and now she was standing in front of 20 strangers who looked like they belonged in a movie about trouble. But she had run out of options. Just a few hours earlier, Marisol had woken up in the small room she shared with her younger brother Mateo. The sunlight had slipped through the torn curtains and painted golden lines across the cracked walls. Their mother had already left for work. She worked 2 jobs cleaning offices and washing dishes at night, leaving before sunrise and returning long after dark. It had been like that since Marisol's father disappeared 3 years earlier. Life had become a quiet struggle. Bills piled up, food was sometimes scarce. But Marisol tried her best to take care of Mateo. That morning, while walking behind the diner on their way to the small park nearby, Mateo had heard a faint sound coming from the weeds near the back lot. At first it sounded like a tiny squeak. Curious, they pushed through the tall grass and found something that made Marisol's heart ache. Hidden beneath an old cardboard box were 5 tiny puppies. Their eyes were barely open. Their bodies trembled, as they huddled together in the shade. Someone had abandoned them. Mateo immediately fell in love. Marisol knew they couldn't take them home. Their tiny apartment barely had room for the 2 of them. But she also knew the puppies wouldn't survive long under the burning sun. So she made a plan. She brought them a small bowl of water from the diner's outdoor faucet and used a towel she found in the trash to make them a nest. She decided she would come back later with food somehow. Then the motorcycles arrived. The thunder of engines shook the ground as the Hells Angels rolled into the diner parking lot. At first Marisol thought it didn't matter. But then she saw where they parked. Directly beside the weeds, right beside the hidden cardboard box. She knew what would happen the moment those engines roared again. The noise, the vibration, the chaos. The tiny puppies would scatter. And most of them probably wouldn't survive crossing the highway. That was why she ran forward. That was why she stood there now with shaking hands and desperate eyes. Rocco listened quietly as Marisol finally explained. Her voice cracked as she pointed toward the weeds. The bikers exchanged uncertain glances. Slowly, one of them walked over and moved the cardboard box. The moment he lifted it, a collective gasp spread through the group. 5 tiny puppies blinked up at them. They were so small they could barely stand. The big biker with the shaved head carefully lifted one into his enormous hands as if it were made of glass. The tough men who looked like they feared nothing suddenly became very quiet. The diner's waitress stepped outside, wiping her hands on her apron, confused by the silence. Then something unexpected happened. One by one, the bikers began kneeling. 20 leather-clad riders surrounded the little box like a group of gentle giants protecting treasure. Marisol watched in disbelief. Rocco rubbed the back of his neck slowly. He had seen fights, prison cells, broken roads, and worse things than he cared to remember. But he had never expected a little girl to stop his entire crew because she wanted to save a few helpless animals. And somehow, it hit him harder than he expected. Without a word, he pulled out his phone. Within minutes, the entire scene transformed. One biker drove to a nearby store and returned with milk and pet food. Another found a clean crate in the back of a pickup truck. Someone else brought water. The rough parking lot slowly turned into a rescue mission. Marisol and Mateo watched with wide eyes as the same bikers they had feared began gently feeding the puppies. The waitress started laughing in disbelief. A couple passing by even stopped to take pictures. The sun shone brightly over the strange scene. 20 outlaw bikers crouched around a box of puppies while 2 children watched like it was the greatest miracle they had ever seen. But the story didn't end there. As the afternoon stretched on, Rocco learned more about Marisol's life. About her mother, about the missing father, about the quiet struggles hidden behind her brave smile. And something about that story stirred something deep inside him. Because Rocco had once been a scared kid too. A kid who needed someone to step in. Before sunset, a plan was forming among the riders. The puppies would be taken to a safe shelter run by a woman one of the bikers knew. Food and supplies would be delivered to Marisol's home. And Rocco quietly left an envelope with the diner owner, asking him to pass it to the children's mother later. No one made a big show of it. No speeches, no cameras, just quiet kindness. The kind that changes lives without asking for credit. The sun dipped lower as the bikers prepared to leave again. This time Marisol didn't stop them. The puppies were safe. Mateo hugged one of the riders before they climbed onto their motorcycles. And when the engines finally roared to life, the sound felt different somehow. Not frightening, almost comforting. Because Marisol knew something now that many adults forgot. Sometimes the people who look the toughest carry the biggest hearts. And sometimes all it takes to reveal that heart is the courage of a small girl who refuses to stay silent. If this story touched your heart, please take a moment to support it. Stories like these remind the world that kindness can appear in the most unexpected places. Like the video, share it with someone who believes in compassion, and tell us in the comments where you're watching from. And before the story ends, here is a special request for you. Write in the comments, kindness still exists. Because every time someone writes those words, it reminds others that hope is still alive in this world. As the motorcycles disappeared down the glowing highway, Marisol stood in the warm evening light with Mateo beside her. The road grew quiet again. But something important had changed. Not just for the puppies. Not just for the children. But for everyone who had witnessed the moment when fear turned into kindness. And sometimes, that's all it takes to make the world feel a little brighter.